Hi my dear children, how are you all? I hope you all are doing great. Yes, so today we are going to learn about the third part from your the earth, the sun and the moon lesson, right? So from your 5th standard science subject, so today we are going to learn about moon, right? So in this part you are going to learn about in detail what is moon, right? So we all know that the moon is the natural satellite on the earth, right? So the moon is the natural satellite of the earth and moon is the closest neighbor to the earth, right? So we all know that the planets revolve around the sun the same way the natural satellites they revolve around the planets. So we know that all the planets have moon except Mercury and Venus. So, Mercury and Venus does not have moon, whereas all the other planets have moons, right? So, Earth has one natural satellite. So, Earth has one moon, right? So, the moon is spherical in shape, right? And the moon does not have air or water. So, the moon is not having air and water. There is no air and water on the moon, right? And the moon does not have its own light. So, how we can say sun or the stars have the light, right? They give out heat, they give out light. But moon does not have its own light. But how do we can able to see the moon during the clear night sky, right? So, it is because the moon reflects the light that falls on it. It reflects the sunlight that falls on it, right? So, the sunlight falls on the moon. So, thereby only we can able to see the moon brightly in the clear night sky, right? Okay. Now, let us see what is the distance between the earth and the moon. So, the distance between the earth and the moon is about 3,84,400 kilometers. So, this is the distance between earth as well as moon, right? Now, let us see the diameter of the moon. So, what is diameter? The complete length of it, right? So, from here to here. So, the diameter of the moon is about 3,500 kilometers. Clear? So, the diameter of the moon is 3,500 kilometer and the distance between the earth and the moon is 3,84,400 kilometers, right. Now, when we compare the gravity between the earth and the moon has 1/6 gravity of the earth. So, for example, 1/6 gravity is there in the moon. For example, if you cannot lift any heavy objects on the earth, but if you take that object on the moon, you can able to easily lift. Why? Because the gravity is 1/6 less when compared with the earth, right. So, for example, if your weight is 36 kg, if you go to moon, if you check your weight will be only 6 kgs. So, for example, if your weight is 36 kg, so your weight on the moon, it will be 6 times lesser than the weight on the earth. So, on the earth, if your weight is 36 kg, on the moon, your weight will be only 6 kg. So, the weight will be 6 times lesser on the moon because of the 1/6 gravity that is present on the moon, right. Now, as there is no air on the moon, so no sound can be heard on the moon, right. And we can say here, so the part where the moon receives sunlight will be hot and the part where the where it does not receive sunlight, it will be cold. Okay, right. Now, on the moon, we can see the surface of the moon has many mountains, valleys, all these are present here. So, you can see the blackish layers here, right. So, on the surface of the moon. So, what are these? So, these are nothing but craters. Okay. Now, let us see what is craters. So, this is craters. So, these are all called as craters. So, what are craters? Craters are the huge hollow holes that is present on the surface of the moon. So, craters are nothing but they are the big round hollows. So, you can see here, right, big hollow holes, right. So, these are all nothing but craters. Okay. So, how these craters are present on the moon? It is because as there is no air on the moon, the meteoroids hit the surface of the moon and thereby made this type of holes on the surface of the moon. Because of presence of atmosphere on the earth, our earth is protected from the meteoroids. But there is no air on the moon surface are hit by the meteoroids. Meteoroids means windkirkal, they will say, right? Yes. So, that meteoroids coming and crashing or hitting the surface of the moon and thereby made many big hollows, right, on the moons, on the surface of the moon. So, these are known as craters, right. So, now you learned about moon, right. So, what is moon and what are all the things that is present on the moon like craters, and you learnt about the diameter as well as the distance between the earth and the moon. And we know that for a moon it will take 28 days to revolve around the earth. So, once if it starts from a place and to complete one revolution of it will take 28 days. Clear? Okay. Now, let us see the phases of the moon. Okay. So, what are the phases of the moon? So, here you can see the moon is revolving around the earth, right. So, the moon is revolving around the earth. So, here when the moon is here, okay, so the part of the earth they cannot able to see the moon. So, the moon will be dark. Why? Because the sunlight will not fall on the moon, thereby we cannot able to see the moon. So, that moon we call it as new moon. So, these are the phases of the moon. Phases of moon. So, when we see from the earth, sometimes the moon changes its shape, right. The moon does not change its shape, but the sunlight fall on the part of the moon, thereby we can able to see different shapes on the moon, right. So, here as there is no sunlight falls on the moon, we call that day or we call that as new moon day. Okay. When the moon comes on the place where some part of the sunlight falls on the moon, right. So, this part will be visible. So, we can see this part. So, this type of moon, sometimes after the new moon day, after 3-4 days, we can able to see this type of shape of the moon, right. So, this moon is known as crescent moon. Clear? And when the moon comes here, we can see like this. So, this moon we call it as quarter moon. So, little bit more the sunlight fall on the moon. So, this we call it as quarter moon. And when the moon comes here, so the moon can able to see, we can able to see half of the moon. So, half part of the moon can be visible. So, this part we call it as half moon. Clear? And when the moon comes here, nearly most of the part of the moon receives the sunlight. So, we can able to see the moon like this. So, this part will be visible. As this part, this whitish part receives the sunlight, so we can able to see the moon in this shape. Clear? So, this moon is known as gibbous moon. Gibbous moon. And when the moon comes here, so the most of the part of the moon receives the sunlight. So, we can able to see the complete moon here. So, we can see all the part of the moon receives the sunlight. So, we can able to see the moon in a very clear spherical shape. So, all the part of the moon receives the sunlight. So, this moon we call it as, yes, full moon. So, likewise it will keep on going like this. Okay, again the gibbous moon, half moon, quarter moon, again crescent moon. So, likewise, so once the moon starts from here, it will take 14 days to get the full moon day. After 14 days, again the moon will get a new moon day. So, thereby to complete this one revolution, it will take 28 days. So, this new moon we call it as Amavasya, and this full moon we call it as Paurnami, right? Okay. So, this is the phases of the moon. So, where we can see different shapes of moon during the 28 days, right? Okay. Now, let us see what are the spacecrafts that is present, that is that went into the moon, right? So, the first spacecraft that landed on the moon. So, this one is known as Apollo 11. So, this spacecraft is called as Apollo 11. Okay. So, this Apollo 11 was the first spacecraft that landed on the moon. So, which is carried along with this spacecraft 3 American astronauts, they landed on the moon, right? The day 21st July 1969. So, on this day, the first spacecraft, which is known as Apollo 11, landed on the moon carried with 3 American astronauts. So, who are these 3 American astronauts? They are, first one, Neil Armstrong, and then Edwin Aldrin, and Michael Collins. So, these three American astronauts, they traveled through this spacecraft and they landed on the moon. So, the first person to step on the moon is Neil Armstrong. So, he is the first person who landed, who stepped on the moon, right, and followed by Edwin Aldrin. So, he is the second person to land on the moon, right, but Michael Collins stayed in the spacecraft itself. So, as this is not an unmanned spacecraft, it should be handled by a human, right. So, that is why Michael Collins stayed in the spacecraft itself, whereas the Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin stepped out of the spacecraft and landed on the moon, and they spent nearly 2.5 hours and they collected many samples of rocks from the moon to the earth, right. So, still we can able to see the footprints that is kept by these persons on the moon. Why? Because as there is no air, so the footprints are still there, okay, as it is a proof, right. So, as there is no air and on the moon, so we can still able to, if you go to moon, still you can able to see the footprints that is kept by the Neil Armstrong or the Edwin Aldrin, okay, right. Now, so this is the first spacecraft that was launched by the Americans, right. So, here you can see as he is the first man, Neil Armstrong was the first man who landed on the moon. So, now we can see the picture of the three American astronauts. So, who are they? Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin and then Michael Collins. So, these are the three persons who traveled, through the spacecraft and landed, they went to moon and they came back, right. So, these are the three persons, right. So, he is Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin and Michael Collins, right. So, now we know that the first spacecraft that landed on the moon is Apollo 11, but this is worldwide, right. But generally if you, you should know that India has launched its first unmanned spacecraft to the moon, right. So, the name of the spacecraft that was launched by India is Chandrayaan 1. So, this is known as Chandrayaan 1. So, in the on the day of 22nd October 2008. So, from the Satish Dhawan Space Center, which is at Sriharikota, okay. So, from Indian Space Research Organization has launched the first spacecraft to moon. So, the name of the first spacecraft to moon is Chandrayaan 1 on the day 22nd October 2008. So, this spacecraft, it has orbited the moon and collected the information. It has mapped the moon surface and has collected information about the moon, and it has called off on 30th August 2009. So, this spacecraft was again called off on 30th August 2009. So, till this period, this spacecraft collected the information about the moon, and which was launched by India, right, from the Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota, which is launched by Indian Space Research Organization, right. So, now you learned the spacecrafts that landed on the moon, right. So, now children, in this third part, you have learned about moon in detail, right. So, what is the diameter of the moon, what is the distance between the moon and the earth, and also you learnt about the gravity of the moon, which is about 1/6 lesser than the earth gravity, right. And also you learnt the persons that who landed on the moon: Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins and Edwin Aldrin. So, these are the 3 persons that who went to the moon, right? And also you learned the spacecraft that was launched by India, right? So, which is known as Chandrayaan 1, right? So, and also you learned about the phases of the moon. So, we can call moon when it is at a different shapes, right? So, these are the things that you learned in this class. So, hope you understood about very much about moon, right? So, go through the lesson, go through the given information, as well as in the below description link you can see the material that is attached related with your chapter. So, go through that, copy in your science note and read from your science note. So, once you are thorough with this lesson, take the self-assessment and do the self-assessment. So, once you do the self-assessment, you will come to know how far you have understood about the chapter. So, thank you for watching. Have a good day.